Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from New York City, the show that puts you, the listener, in the driver's seat because you are the content. The phone lines are open to be a part of the program. It's a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. Hey, give me a call and we'll have a conversation about your tech questions or business and tech questions. Linux advocate, above all else, small business owner, now host of the only radio show centered around you, the listener. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show. My name is Noah Chalaya. So good evening to you guys. We are live from New York City. Happy to be here with you. We're live in our hotel room. A huge apology for those of you who wanted to come out to the show tonight. Our original live location never actually got confirmed, and so we're stuck indoors, which is actually okay because walking around New York, what we found was it's like a record high. We're going to make up to it. We have a great show and a very special guest joining us tonight. My friend, former co-host, and my boss, actually, Mr. Chris Fisher, owner and operator of Jupiter Broadcasting. Welcome to the program.
Well, hey, buddy. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
So it just took for me putting you up in a hotel room for you to finally get me on the show. I see how
Exactly.
I see how it is.
So we had a show planned, and you and I were actually going to do the very episode we're going to do tonight. And then then we had an unexpected road trip that came up.
Yeah.
And so we weren't able to do it.
Yeah.
But so this is the first show we've done as a duo since I think it was the end of back in May.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so Chris and I both have a passion for small business, and we both own one. And so I'd say most of our conversations are tangentially related to this idea that both of us feel a sense of commitment, a sense of responsibility, not only to our customers, to our viewers, in Chris's case, but to our employees. And we're often called to make difficult decisions that often affect other people's lives, and obviously our bottom line. And so that's, I guess, the price you pay just for having a small business. And so, phone lines are open, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. And Chris and I are here to answer your questions. Live from New York City tonight would be a particularly great night to ask a couple of small business owners your tech questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's true. That's something you and I do have in common is the fact that we both are, I guess you could call it entrepreneurs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we both have that drive, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
You want to take a call?
Yeah, we got a call, yeah.
All right.
That's fun.
Ian is calling from Canada. Hi, Ian. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hi, Noah.
Hey, Ian. How can we help?
Hi.
Your question for Chris and me.
Yeah, I've heard you talk in the past about virtualization. I know you're a big fan of that. Could you just give me a brief overview again? I've heard you talk about thin clients and what you use as a thin client. Do you use a remote desktop, or what's the basic setup that you need if you're like virtualizing, say, a Windows for several users?
Sure. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Oh, wow. You're going to go right to me? Because I was actually curious to hear what you use here. I will take this moment to make a gratuitous plug for considering Proxmox, which I don't think it's enough love on this show. I mean, you have mentioned it.
Yep.
But we've run that in production now for years at Jupiter Broadcasting, and it's been super successful for us. Now, how you deliver end client machines, is that what you're talking about? Like just virtualizing end client machines and then presenting that out to users, or am I tracking?
Yeah, that's right, yes.
Yeah, so what do you do for that, Noah?
My suggestion, so Proxmox is a great, actually...
For the back end.
For the back end to actually host the virtual machines. Now, how you actually connect to them, there's a couple different ways you could do it. The first way would be to use a software-based system like Remina. If it's a Windows software, you could use RDP for the protocol to connect. If it's a Linux system, I would use something like X2Go. X2Go has very, very similar performance to RDP. Mm-hmm. Now, another thing you could do is a hardware solution from our friends over at N-Computing. And what they make is they make the N-Computing L300 thin client. Mm-hmm. And these are available for about $35 used. They're about $200 new. Ncomputing.com. And what it allows you to do is you install their software, which runs on Windows or Linux, onto the host machine. So if you're using a physical host, you do it that way. If you're virtualizing your host even, then you would use Proxmox on the physical hardware, install Windows as a virtual machine, and then you would install the N-Computing virtualization software on top of that. The advantage of that is, Ian, that you can basically take a large office, and we've done it as large as probably 40, 50 clients, 40, 50 workstations, and you can virtualize that all with the end computing. And then your end hardware is just those $30 boxes.
Ian, what is your timeline for this project? Because there is a sort of a forward-looking answer I have for you, but it's not quite baked yet.
Well, it's just an ongoing thing because I've come across
Sure.
a few people that I've needed to put this into practice. And I've just been using virtual boxes moments and things like that. So
you might be in the perfect position to try something that's the very beginnings are landing right now in GNOME 3.26, and it's the back-end infrastructure to use Pipewire. I just interviewed the developer of Pipewire on last week's Linux Unplugged, and it exposes the display output as either RDP or VNC.
Wow.
And so you can run that inside a KVM machine, and then you can expose the desktop using Pipewire to an RDP client.
Yeah,
so
sure.
from Windows or from like Romania.
Yeah.
And it's it's brand new. They just are beginning to lay down the code right now. But you give that 6 months, it's really going to be there. You give it another GNOME release, and this could be very solid. And by the way, future compatible with Wayland.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ian, that's what I would do. Does that sound good to you?
yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much for the call. Yeah, it's really interesting. So you're right. We don't give enough love to Proxmox. And it's funny because like I did a huge virtualization episode. Of course, I'm dealing with all these enterprise clients, and so we're dealing with the software that is pushed for the enterprise, and so Overt comes up a lot, and obviously libvirt. And the funny thing is like Proxmox is basically like this great web UI that just kind of controls libvirt. So it's actually the same technology.
And plus, I'm not super current on Proxmox, but at least the one that we have is based on Debian. So if you're a fan of running Debian on your server, Proxmox is a Debian-based system with just a lot of nice stuff built on. And for me, that's been a super solid foundation.
Absolutely. So tell me this, Chris. You started over 10 years ago. You started Jupiter Broadcasting, and when that first came up, you obviously had a passion and a desire and a particular skill set that allowed you to step outside the norm of employment, so to speak, and you started this broadcasting company, which has now become very successful and probably the largest content or the largest network of Linux content. And obviously the home to the Ask Noah show. So tell me a little bit about what was in your mind when you first started that.
It was actually avoiding a mistake. It was almost a Linux OS, and I don't want to call it a distribution because we were calling it Jupiter OS.
Okay.
And you don't call it a distribution because it's not. It's a desktop operating system.
Yes.
Okay. And this is, in fact, very much. I was just reminded by listener Ian, who is here at the Ubuntu Rally and in New York City. And he was one of the contributors early on to Jupiter OS. And pretty early into Jupiter OS, I'd say, 6 months, maybe, no more. I had this realization that Brian and I did not make good operating system developers. But we made decent podcasts.
Yeah. Okay.
So I thought, okay, well, so what could we do with this? And we both really liked the retro feel of Jupiter Broadcasting because we had a bunch of different content at the time that kind of fit. And so that was sort of this moment where I went, well, I could try to do 100 different things. Or I could just be honest, we can sit here and we can produce weekly content, but we're not getting this OS off the ground.
Yeah.
And we should just be honest with ourselves, what our limitations are and what our strengths are.
Okay.
And that was really sort of the moment we went, okay, well, now we have to eat a little egg on our face here, kind of whatever, because we had to pull back from that whole Jupiter OS project.
So you started, just creating really great content just because it was a passion of yours, and then later you said, well, now that we have this idea of this thing of how we can kind of, structure the thing, now we're going to take that structure that didn't quite fit, we're just going to wrap it around what we do best.
Yeah, and then it was, okay, how do we turn this into a business? Not so much so that we can get rich, because that certainly hasn't happened, but it's so much so that, well, if we're going to make the type of content at the quality level that we want, it's going to require a lot of time. And the only way to make that possible is if it pays the bills, because I'm obsessed with it. It's the only thing I can really do anyways. I'm pretty much unemployable now.
Yeah. We talk about that too. How once you get that drive, once you get that kind of entrepreneur spirit, it's difficult to go back.
That's all I care about.
Yeah. If you could go back in time and you were going to go give yourself one piece of advice. Now, I know what your answer to that would be if I was asking you this question, 9 months ago. But today, what would be the one thing you go back and tell yourself?
I would say stay focused and accept that you have, again, core strengths and consider spinning off the work that you don't like doing faster.
Okay.
Because like I had like this pride about it. Like I can grind through this. I can get this done.
Yeah.
And then what I found myself doing was just hating that part of my job, which then was starting to kill motivation. It was killing creativity. It was killing my content creation. And so I realized, oh, wait a minute. It's actually responsible for me to have somebody else do this work. I'm not being lazy.
Yeah.
I'm doing effective management.
Right.
And then once I made that sort of transition, I feel like the shows started getting a lot better. I still haven't made the full transition. There's, even while I'm in New York, there's still things I'm checking in with daily to make sure the plates are still spinning. I mean, it's just the way when you own a business, it's the way it goes.
Sounds to me what you're saying is it's the difference between working on your business and in your business. You started, you owned your job, you're working in your business, and then eventually you stepped out and said, okay, now I'm going to run the thing, and I'll do the parts that are fun for me, but I'm going to stay from back here, and I'll work on the business.
And I had to make that transition to it being a job, so that way I could think about it that way.
Right.
Instead of these are the things I like doing.
Right. Yes. Going from a hobby.
Yeah.
What's been the most frustrating thing that you've learned or come across?
Probably the hardest thing would be you can have a lot of people working really hard on something, and doesn't mean everything's always going to work out when there's a lot of moving parts. And when you're a small like one person business, it's all on you, and that's bad in the sense that it's all on you, and that's good in the sense that it means it's only your responsibility if something goes wrong.
Right.
And you have 100% control over that aspect of it.
Right.
When you're in a group, and sometimes as a business gets larger, there's other parts, like you have internet connectivity issues because you have multiple ISPs and you have multiple data providers and download providers, and they can have an outage, and you can have the most incredible episode you're super proud of, and the RSS feed service is down.
Right.
And there's just nothing you can do about it, and you're sitting there, twirling your thumbs. Rikai's sitting there twirling his thumbs. There's nothing he can do about it, and you just have to sit there and go, wow. No matter how hard we work, sometimes there's just bad things happen, and it's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
And the lesson there was, okay, well, how do we not let this totally demotivate us and just move on to the next thing? Got to make the next show.
So in some regards, just knowing where the limitations that you have no control are out of.
Yeah, or actually, because there you always find new things. You always discover new things. So it's really the ability to adapt and keep your head and keep moving forward. Because you take this stuff pretty seriously when it's your business. I mean, I know you've been in this position too, probably, where something doesn't go the way you wanted it, either because of a quality issue or an external force.
Oh, yeah.
And you're left feeling like maybe if it was me that was maybe if I had done something differently, and you got to struggle with that.
Yeah, and, one of the things too that I have gotten to is when I kind of look at some of this stuff and I say, I ultimately always come back to I blame myself. Every time I blame myself. And when I kind of look at that, I say, well, okay, if I was working for a larger organization and I had somebody else to kind of kick it to or punt it to, or maybe there's something else I could shove it off on, and we just don't have that opportunity, small business owners, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
So, I guess we'll continue that conversation as we go on. I want to take another call here. Philip is calling from San Diego. Hi, Philip. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hi, how's it going?
Oh, sorry, Philip.
Go ahead, Phil.
Go ahead.
again.
I turned the thingy down.
Yeah, no worries. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Hey, Philip, I'm having a little. Even though I made the first mistake, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. Can you speak directly into your phone?
Yes. Is that better?
Much better.
Yeah.
Much better. How can we help?
Okay, so I have a sort of an unconventional situation here. I'm working on a Raspberry Pi project, and it's supposed to be a USB wireless dongle is what I'm converting it into. And I've already done I've done the soldering and stuff. And I'm able to get it to I installed Raspbian on it, and I'm able to get it to show up on my computer screen when I log in with the USB port. But the issue that I'm having is trying to SSH into the Raspberry Pi. It just keeps coming up as it doesn't recognize the local host. And
I'm confused. You're making your Raspberry Pi a USB dongle, a Wi-Fi dongle?
Yeah, I kind of went on a tangent, and I saw this project on the internet, and I thought I'd give a crack at it.
And
Sure.
so,
Tell me a little bit about the project.
so-
What does a USB dongle do? What is a what
Well, I think what he's saying is he's turning the Raspberry Pi into like a Wi-Fi adapter. Then he's connecting that to the USB on his computer, and it acts as a Wi-Fi dongle. Like it's like a home-built Wi-Fi dongle, which is kind of cool.
how
But how does the Raspberry
Yeah,
Pi get
connect-
associated to an AP and get
right?
an IP?
And also how does it actually connect to the computer? Because I can't take a USB-B cable and plug it into both ends. I'm very confused.
No, so basically what you do is you've got a male USB plug, like
Okay.
a normal the one that you and then you solder that to the with wires to the bottom pads on the Raspberry Pi.
Okay.
For the power and the USB in, and then it just siphons off the power from the USB port, and then
I
the
gotcha.
data is supposed
That's
to be-
awesome.
It
Nice
acts
mod,
as a
okay.
USB connected device.
I understand. Okay. Thank you for catching me up. I'm sorry
Yeah,
about that.
you missed the soldering part.
yeah,
You gotta
I guess so.
He did a little illegal hack here on his Raspberry Pi.
That's okay. Okay, now I'm caught up. Sorry, my brain's a little slow. Okay, so so now how are you trying to SSH into the thing? This is your SSHing in over when it's connected to the network.
Yeah, it's supposed to be able to work. It's supposed to use like the Avahi daemon or whatever to connect as a advertise as a local host. And you're supposed to be able to connect to it. Through the Raspberry Pi, but I can't get it to. And it's real weird because when I plug it into my computer, Network Manager will show that I have a wired connection available, so I know that it's recognizing that there's something there. But SSH refuses to see it.
Now, how do you know that the Raspberry Pi is successfully on the network at all? Like, what indications do you have that it has an IP and that Avahe would be advertising its services?
Well, so when I do like ifconfig, I can see the Raspberry Pi is listed in the listed device.
So you know your Linux kernel's talking to it. You know the Linux box and the Raspberry Pi at least see each other over the USB interface.
Right, but what it doesn't see, I guess because Raspberry Pi as a default is supposed to say like localhost from like pi at localhost, pi at raspberry.localhost or whatever. But yeah, it says it doesn't recognize that SSH.
You know what I
can't
would do is I think you need to do a sanity check, and I would hook up display and keyboard to the Raspberry Pi and see what get a console up from your Debian install there, and see what you can ping out to and what your ifconfig information comes back there, because you got to verify that's working.
Well, so and that's kind of the issue is because it's the they have the Raspberry Pi Zero and they have the Raspberry Pi Zero W, which is the W is the one that has the wireless. I have just the Zero, so there's no wireless out.
Oh, okay.
So
now I'm confused. Now I'm confused again. So how is the Raspberry Pi connected to the network then?
Hope?
No, not Hope. So it's not actually ever. It's connected to the. It's like a local network between.
Oh, okay.
So let me see if I see if I understand this. So you're trying to SSH into the Raspberry Pi over the USB cord. Then that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, like get a network connection up over that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it gets real wild here. 'Cause ultimately, I want this to be like a Bitcoin cold storage wallet. Right.
Now we're talking.
Okay.
This does get real wild.
I'm totally on board with your project. So here's my next question: is do you have an IP address assigned to that USB interface that is kind of acting as a network adapter thing?
No, I don't have a static IP or anything assigned to it.
How are you SSHing into it?
Well, so because with SSH you're supposed to be able to when you plug it in from a USB, it's supposed to treat it as an Ethernet device through like G Ether. It's like because basically the Linux picks it up as an Ethernet device, and then you can.
But Philip, here's the issue. Here's the issue. The issue is that when you drop to your terminal and you type in SSH and whatever follows after the SSH, the computer has to be able to resolve that thing. And so if it's a name, first it's going to look in your host file, and if it can't find it in your host file, then it's going to look at your preferred DNS servers. And if neither of those places have an answer to whatever the thing is, you're simply not going to be able to connect. If you put an IP address directly in there, it's not going to try to resolve that, obviously, but it is going to try to either route those packets if it can connect directly, and if it can't, it'll send it to its default gateway. So the issue that you're having is and I could be wrong about this, but I don't think that you can just plug the USB cable in and then type SSH, root at localhost or local pi or whatever, and it's just going to find that.
Well, so, and I'm, I was following, if I could, I don't know, this might be outside of the scope, but I was following, tutorials of, other people that had done this before, and they have had success doing this. But it's, for some reason, I'm just not getting access. And I'm getting, I went through some of the troubleshooting that people had recommended online, and I'm getting, these block errors when I do dmessage. I'm getting, some kind of block 11 error when it's trying to recognize it as a USB-connected device, and I don't know if that's maybe causing the issue.
Maybe my problem is, and unless you've not made any changes to the actual computer, right? All you've done is just plug this USB cable in.
Yeah, no, just the Raspberry. Basically, it's the Pi Zero I plugged directly into the computer.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, so I guess Philip, as far as and again, there's probably somebody out there. I am not the world's expert on Raspberry Pis, and I'm sure there's somebody out there that knows a lot more about this than I do. But based on my limited understanding, I don't see any way that the computer is going to be able to resolve those names. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put you back on hold. I'm going to have Sarah pick up and grab your information. And there is a guy in the Telegram group. It's telegram.asknoahshow.com. His name is Jason, and he does all sorts of stuff like this and connects Raspberry Pis to all different things that they probably shouldn't be connected to. So I'm going to put you back on hold. I'll have Sarah pick up. She'll take your information. I'll forward that on to him, and we'll see if he maybe has an answer for you, and I'm sorry that we don't. All right, I want to play an interview for you guys. This is a really inspiring gentleman, a man who dropped out of high school, who was told time and time again that you're not going to amount to anything, you're not going anywhere, and in spite of all of that, he said, no, you know what? I don't believe that Eeyore is my spirit animal, and I think that there is a way that I can overcome this, and I think that I can do it online by teaching myself, different resources and a different skill set. And I kind of told the story on the 4th of July, and it was a pleasure. He came out to Grand Forks, and him and I hung out for a weekend, and he's a really inspiring individual to look at, or to listen to. So coming up is an interview with Mr. Ron McMahon. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Ron, and Ron was back in Grand Forks a couple of months ago. For a quick refresher for you guys, Ron was working a job at Walmart in the produce section, and in the middle of moving some bananas, he had this epiphany that he wanted to code databases. He wanted to make a lot of money doing it, and Ron set out on a mission, and we have Ron here on the Ask Noah Show. Hey, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, we appreciate having you. So tell me the story. How did this hit you? What was happening? Was it actually bananas?
It wasn't even really Walmart or produce. There was about 5 or 6 years in between there doing warehouse stuff, driving forklifts, doing freight stuff, doing inventory places at different warehouses, and I ended up at a freight company doing forklift driving for a little bit, and reorganized an Excel spreadsheet, and the boss noticed and said, oh, you're good with computers. Fast forward a couple months, they put me in a claims department. Claims suddenly didn't have any queues anymore. Fast forward another couple months, and I would do some reporting stuff for them. After doing reports about 2 times, I decided I didn't like it and started looking for another forklift job. At the same time, I was kind of Googling how to automate the stuff, just, copy-paste Excel, automatic. I didn't know what code was. I didn't know what an Excel macro was. And before I know it, I'd spent 4 months building this 1,200-line Excel VBA macro with no indentation, no functions, no comments. No idea how it worked, but it worked. They noticed that. They sent me off into a provisionary role into development. I did development there for a while, and that company just happened to have a lot of their logic in the database, so I very quickly learned SQL, and been a fun time. That was about 4 years ago now.
And when you say, you moved into their development department, my understanding was this is kind of a smaller company, so development department, I mean, was it more like you had some guys on the IT staff, or like did they have like an actual like division of the company for doing development?
It was really just the IT staff. There were people who were known for the network stuff. There was the database guy, and there were the developer guys who would avoid as much of the database stuff as they could. It was all fresh and new and fun to me, and I was learning stuff as I was going along, so I would just say yes to anything they asked me to do, and they gave me the time to figure it out.
When you first started doing this, was there a moment where you were like, what did I get myself into? What am I doing? I don't know anything about databases.
Was there a moment? That moment's every day. Especially after I left that company about a year and a half into it, we all walked into a status meeting. We all got laid off. That's just kind of what happened. At that point, I had a year of experience. I went out there, found a contract, got that contract, and like I said, that moment happens every day. Day one of that contract, it was like, what am I doing? Do I know what I'm doing? Luckily, it seemed that I did. A couple months into the contract, that company hired me. It's where I am now, and it's a great time, but it still happens at least every couple of weeks or something, Do I even know what I'm doing? What have I been doing for the last 4 years? Who am I, and what's going on here?
So when you say contract, you mean you were hired as a temporary employee. You were hired by a temp agency that loaned you out then to a company.
Correct. That company paid me, and then the company that I now work for paid them. It's supposed to be a 6 to 12 week contract. There were some interesting things that happened in between there that I won't get into. Albeit about 4 or 5 months after contracting, the company did hire me on full time.
Okay, so walk me through this a little bit, because you're not, so when you sit down, you're going to go do these, you're starting on this database development, but obviously these functions aren't just coming to you in your head. I mean, you're learning them somewhere. Did you go to school, or did you take a class, or someone show you something?
I dropped out of high school, and a lot of it was Google, and it stemmed mostly from the VBA stuff and Excel, and getting my hands on a code base at the first company that I'd worked at, where this thing had been developed for 20 years in SQL Server. There was a lot of code to look at, and there were a lot of things wrong with that code to look at, and they needed people to fix it. So being able to just get hands-on with a set of code and morph it and meld it just a little bit at a time, change something, push a button, see what happens. That's sort of how I learned, just kind of trial and error.
Did you have any online resources that you found that were particularly like, oh, that really got me going, that really helped me get started and helped me kind of push through, and when I did have questions, that's where I went to learn new skills?
A huge thing that I wish I had known about at the time was the W3 Schools resource, and I'm sure there'll be a link in the show notes, right? Mm-hmm. It's a cute little database that sits in your browser, and you can reset it with a mouse click at any time. You don't have to install MySQL. You don't have to set anything up. It's just a thing. It's a tab in your browser, and it's enough that I would say anyone who wants to could step through their little process there, learn all the different things, learn how to do joins, learn what the aggregate functions are, grouping, all that stuff with SQL. They could easily go walk into contract reporting jobs after spending a couple months on that site.
Okay, now there's going to be people out there, and they're going to say, so this guy, he doesn't have a high school diploma, and they're probably sitting in the same boat. I don't have a high school diploma, and I don't have any formal education in databases or computers or any of that stuff, and they're working as a whopper flopper, at Burger King for minimum wage. Is that the most that somebody who dropped out of high school could expect?
Definitely not. I dropped out of high school. I walked out on interviews at companies that won't hire someone without a diploma. Am I lucky? Maybe, but it's never been a hindrance to me.
So when you say you walk out, like that's you ask them that. You say, hey, let's just get this right out on the table. Hi, my name is Ron. Good to meet you. Let's just get this out on the table. I don't have a high school diploma, so if that's a problem for you, let's shake hands and call it a day, and I'll go somewhere else. If it's not, let's keep going.
Yeah, I've had more than one interview that's gone like that.
And sometimes they tell you, they're like, yeah, sorry, that's kind of a thing, and you get up and walk out. And other times they're like, no, we'll talk to you.
Yeah, this company here, technically it's on the books or whatever, the company I work for, they drafted up a position for me and said, quote, or relevant experience, and that's just kind of how it seemed to work for me, at least so far in the industry.
And you don't have to give exact figures, but give me a ballpark. What should somebody not settle for? What should somebody look and say that's not an unachievable goal with no high school diploma and no formal education and no prior experience? What could somebody What is the bar that somebody can look to achieve?
When I was breaking into the warehouse and forklift industry, I thought $20 an hour would be sweet, and that'd be plenty of money. I'd be fine for life. That'd be the peak of a job for me, and I'd be perfectly all right there. That's less than half of where I'm at now, and I'm still at entry level. I won't say entry level. I'm definitely at, mid level, far from the higher reaches of what you can do in database stuff.
And you have every expectation to continue to move that direction.
I hope to. We'll see.
Okay, that's fair. If you had to go back in time, you were going back to the first you that was starting out at this forklift job, what would you tell yourself? What kind of advice would you give yourself?
A big thing to the W3 Schools SQL tutorials again, it's huge. Also, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to mess up. Don't be afraid to break things. Try to stay away from production if you're going to break stuff. But it's okay to write code that doesn't work. As long as you're in a place where stuff goes through development and testing, it's perfectly okay. Don't kill yourself over not being able to get it right the first time. When I write 300 lines of code over a couple hours and press go and it works the first time, I freak out. It never works the first time. Don't feel bad about that. Nobody gets it right the first time. Those kinds of people are very, very far and few in between.
Give me an idea of how Linux and open source and the ability to access software freely, how that's played a role, if any.
It's getting there. SQL Server's coming to Linux. I want to be the SQL Server on Linux guy, but I keep dragging my feet on it because I don't like doing presentations or putting stuff together. And it's fun. I play with Linux all the time. I run a Linux VM on my work laptop to do my IRC and hang out and stuff. I use it at home. I've got Open Media Vault on a file server. I've got Proxmox running a hypervisor that runs my Windows domain at home.
Sure, that makes sense. So it's interesting too because even the small amount of movement that you have made in the SQL Server on Linux side has reached the corners of me, and I'm about as far away as you get from the Windows infrastructure. So I've kind of thought that was interesting, and of course we wish you the best of luck. If you're looking, do you see that? What kind of timeline do you see before that starts to take off? And maybe not in your environment specifically, but any environment.
As far as I know, Microsoft has said it's, quote, production ready for a few months now, and I know that there are places that are using it side by side. One of the big features in SQL Server is the high availability groups, and it's already possible to run a cluster that contains both Windows and Linux hosts and fail over seamlessly in between. As far as it being Linux only or Linux starting up a new project with Linux for SQL Server, it's going to be at least a couple years, I think. They don't even have, is it Kerberos? Whatever the Windows authentication is working for that yet. You got to do SQL logins, and anyone that takes SQL Server seriously doesn't use SQL logins yet.
How about the community? I know that you and I have a lot of a lot of shared acquaintances and stuff like that. What role, if any, has that played in your experience and your ongoing collaboration, networking, all that?
It's been huge. I don't listen to many of the shows, but I hang out in the Mumble, and we know a lot of the people that hang out in the Mumble, and I credit probably most of, if not all of them, to me getting into this career at all. It was the sort of stuff, I think I met a buddy playing Counter-Strike who dragged me in there, and because he had heard I was doing some code stuff, and there were some code nerds or whatever in the Mumble, and it was just the receptiveness of them to tell me, oh, this is what a for loop does, this is how an iterator works, these are typing, casting, and just all kinds of different programming stuff. They'd listen to me, they'd hear my questions, and they'd talk to me for hours about it as long as I was willing to listen.
One of your earlier experiences, and I know you were talking about this, when you were out here camping with me, and we were talking about how a lot of your development role actually started with an IRC bot. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it was one of the things that got noticed when they sort of interviewed me for the provisionary role, moving from the claims department into the whole development thing at that company. I had just looked at the IRC specification, looked at Python as a language, something I hadn't done before, and I didn't know what a library was or how libraries worked, and I didn't want to learn that. I wanted to write code. Bad idea. Don't do that. But I ended up banging out, it's like a couple hundred lines of Python that just use raw sockets. It connects to IRC, it talks to people, it has commands, it'll tell you the weather, the price of Bitcoin or something like that. It's a terrible abomination of code, but it was me saying no to everyone who's telling me how to do something and that I wanted to learn to do it my way. And it worked well enough for what I wanted to do. I'm still surprised. The thing runs for like months at a time before it crashes.
you and I see very eye to eye when it comes to money management and our aspirations in life. We're both very goal-driven people. I think that's why you and I get along so well. And I have had people time and time again tell me that the normal in life is having $90,000 worth of student loan debt and having a car payment and having a mortgage on a house and trying to do all that on $40,000 a year. And that just isn't possible, and because of that, we should all just throw our hands up and give up. So speak to those people. Tell me, and when I try to counter that, when I try to give examples and say, no, I built my company from the ground up, and I do have a college diploma, but that has not played any role really in where I have gotten. And they say, well, you've had it handed to you. You've got, because you worked for 10 years and you're an overnight success. So you're coming from the exact opposite background, and yet you and I have wound up in very similar positions. So talk to those people for a minute.
We've covered it a couple times already. I'm a high school dropout. I have no formal training. I learned, luckily on the job, there was a company that was willing to help me. But I could have learned all that in the time that I spent playing video games at night if I really wanted to. Up until I had started learning it, I didn't realize that I was smart enough. I could do this, that it was this easy. I had sworn it off because I did so poorly in high school that it was just never going to happen to me. And as far as the whole debt thing goes, I think it's about this week. I've had a credit card for a year, and I got it just because I had started traveling because I've got the money now. And the last times I had traveled with my debit card from my credit union, they would freeze it. So I got a credit card simply because I wanted a thing that would work in case they froze my debit card. The thing hardly ever has a balance on it. I pay it off right away. I just recently took out a loan to buy a car. I took out a 2-year loan. I paid it off in 4 months because seeing the debt balance on my bank account every time I logged in freaked me out. I don't drive a fancy car. It's an 07 Impreza. I will never buy a new car. I'm wary of buying a house. I'm sort of looking into the market now because rent is really just a waste of money. But you don't need to go into massive debt, and definitely don't get yourself on a financial plan of being okay with your minimum payments on everything. I drove beaters. I made sure I always had at least 2 cars so that when one did fall apart, I'd still be able to get places and get to work. I hope to never fall victim to the debt thing, but I understand that if you do get there, it's really hard to get out. So if you aren't in it now, don't succumb to it. Stay away. And if you are there, I hope you get out of it someday. And when you do, please don't fall back into it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Your number one wealth building tool is your income, and anyone that has a strong presence in the financial community, anyone who's studied it, anyone who's looked at it knows that, and they all agree with it. And you and I have just kind of stumbled upon that. Neither one of us, to the best of my knowledge, have had any training in that in that realm. So one last question for you. This is kind of a funny one, and I'll let you answer it to the extent, if at all, if you want to. But do you want to tell people the nature of the product that you're working on, because there is a certain irony to it?
I'm in the education space.
So you are now developing specifically for a particular industry, which I don't want to use the word wrote you off, but you were told that you needed in life to succeed, and now you're making your success from that.
Yeah, and it's awesome. I really do feel like I'm giving back. It's cool to see the software that we are putting out, and we're not alone. There are many competitors that are doing the same thing that we're doing, and I'm just glad that that's a space that exists now and that schools are buying it, because if I had it, I probably would have finished high school.
That's absolutely fantastic. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to stop with us. And I know you're not a big consumer of podcasts in general. Do you think we have a chance of earning your listenership on the Ask Noah Show?
Oh, I've listened to most of them. I need to catch up. I'm a few weeks behind, but I've listened to most of them.
Okay, so of all the shows that are out there, this is the one you chose?
Of any podcast, yeah, it's been this one.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So that was Ron McMahon, and he, like I said, he's a really fantastic individual to talk to. And it's funny because I am going to take and time link that particular interview every time somebody calls me, or every time I have a conversation with somebody, and somebody tells me, no, my best option is to go be a whopper flopper and make $5 an hour, and maybe I'll demand $15 an hour, and hopefully the fast food industry won't just replace me with a kiosk, which we have in Grand Forks, and I have to say is actually quite entertaining for my kids. So, Greg, Ron McMahon, more links in the show notes if you want more information about what he's talking about, w3schools.com. And I would give actually a plug for something like Linux Academy. If you guys, a lot of you are in the Linux space, and if you're looking for some place that will teach you, tips and tricks on how to get started with Linux Academy, or how to get started with Linux, I would use Linux Academy. That's what I've gone to for all of my recertifications, and that is coming from somebody who has previously paid, the high cost to actually attend an official Red Hat training course, and I think I get just as much value out of Linux Academy, and for a fraction of the price. Greg is calling from British Columbia. Hi, Greg. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hi, Noah. Thanks for taking my call. Did I hear that you have Chris Fisher on the line with you this afternoon?
We do. What is your question for Chris?
Rumors are true.
Oh, how's New York doing? I'm a fan of the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, and I tuned into your vlog a couple of times. It's interesting to see how, you meet these challenges and jump on certain opportunities and, throw the open source stuff into the mix and, get things produced and podcasted. It's a lot of fun watching your network.
Well, thank you. We're kind of running around today capturing what essentially the feel is to be here. I'll give you a preview, though. I can give it to you in one word. Can you guess what it is, Noah?
It's cha-ching.
No, it's expensive. Yeah, that is a good one.
I always find New York to be expensive.
I think expensive would have been the word I would have chosen had it not been so dang hot.
Okay, yeah.
It's record-breaking hot here.
Yeah, we set a new record for how hot it is. Yeah,
and when you combine that with the general New York smells and whatnot, it's an interesting experience. But I have actually been really enjoying it, and we ran around all day today in the hotel here at the Ubuntu Rally, capturing people working, and great air conditioning as long as you're in the building. So it's incentive to keep working.
Well, I'll keep tuned to the network and watch for your newest updates.
Thank you. Yeah, I got a new vlog coming out on Tuesday, which continues the trip over here to New York.
And then the one after that, you think will be
probably here?
Yeah, actual. Okay.
And in fact, the one that comes out on Tuesday, that would be Tuesday the 26th, has you in it.
Yeah, don't ruin it.
I won't.
Okay.
Yeah,
you know what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You're thinking what I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. All right. Greg, how can we help? What's your question for Chris and me?
Well, I called to ask you if you have heard about Reddit community where they are modifying Chromebooks to run Windows 10 on your Chromebook.
No, that is one thing out of all. I've done a lot of things with Chromebooks, Greg. I got to tell you, that is the one thing I have not tried to do on a Chromebook.
Maybe it's a business
technique. Well, these guys are having great success. These guys are having great success on the Trultrabook Reddit thread. That's reddit.com/r/CHR Ultrabook.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
And,
all right.
I'm running it on my Chromebook. I bought the Dell Chromebook 13 in December 2015. I ran it under Chrome OS for a year, and I was loving it, getting a lot of use out of Chrome OS. I had a 32 gig SD card that I had installed Ubuntu onto, and I was booting into my Ubuntu install, and then I'd boot into the Chrome OS. The whole time I was following this subreddit, and these guys were making great progress on rewriting the firmware from core boot source code. Mr. Chromebox is the guy who's doing the firmwares, and they've made excellent progress. Right now, you can flash your firmware on several supported Chromebooks, and then the drivers for Windows are installed right from the Windows install.
Interesting.
And how does it run? And what do you do with such?
You guys might want to know. Well, right now I've got I'm running Netrunner. I was paying attention to the network, and you guys were doing your challenge, and Netrunner seemed to get some traction. So I've been running Netrunner on my Chromebook, and it's phenomenal.
So I guess here's my immediate thought when you tell me that people are installing Windows on the Chromebook. So most of these manufacturers that subsidize the cost of the hardware to run Chrome OS. Microsoft is doing the exact same thing. So if you go look at HP, they offer a Chromebook and they offer a very light, very inexpensive Windows computer for about the same price. HP is doing the same thing. I don't know specifically.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know. I know. I do know specifically.
It's not
Dell's
about
doing the
that,
same.
though.
But
It's about reusing old hardware.
yeah,
It's about something you bought, and
I guess I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if there's anyone out there that is looking to do something, if they're like, I would like to buy an inexpensive computer and run Windows, I don't know why you'd want to run Windows, even on a good hardware, much less inexpensive hardware. But if you were going to do that, I feel like there might be better ways to do that. The performance is okay, though? It works all right?
Yep. I'm, the Core Boot firmware is possibly leaner than most manufacturer BIOS setups.
Sure.
There's limitations to flashing the Chrome OS. You get a command line on the Core, so you can run utilities on the command line. You can get into volumes on a shell, and you can boot from an image, but you have to do something like install Refind on there so that you can do multiple boots. You can't run Chrome OS and use this this updated firmware image. You have to choose between them. But you can run Chromium OS. Arnold the Bat will dual boot with Windows on your Chromebook.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well,
you might have to upgrade the SSD storage.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. Well, oops, sorry, sorry, Greg. Every time you start talking, go ahead, Greg.
Okay, I gotta go.
Okay, all right. Okay, that sounds good.
That's my favorite moment right there.
Here's the thing. I mean, this is live radio, so this is what we have to do. But
I love it, though.
It's funny because you wait for the pause until you can you cleanly say goodbye, and then whoops, didn't quite.
You know what, dude? That happens in real life too.
Yeah,
it really does.
Turns out it kind of does.
It's just how it goes.
So I want to. I'd love to get your take on this too, Chris. But there's an article that just came out and has me jumping around for joy. This is from Medium.com. Headline: Wire server code now open source.
Hey-o.
Earlier this year, we started open sourcing Wire server code under the AGPL license. Today, the code necessary to run the Wire server is available for everyone for review. The next step in the team is to remove dependencies on specific services to pave the way for an easily self-hosted server. User interest in self-hosting the Wire server has been extremely high. We're getting requests from the security community, academia, and nonprofits, as well as business clients, especially in the finance and public sector. So basically, for those of you that have been waiting for a instant messaging application that runs over the internet, that provides encrypted end-to-end communication, but you want that to actually be secure, you want to be able to actually audit the source code, you now have an option. And I know that there are people in the chat room that were interested in some sort of a messaging platform, but they were only interested in it if they could host it themselves. Now, the funny caveat to that is a lot of them don't even care about actually hosting it themselves. They don't actually plan to host it. They just want the ability to actually host it, and then they are willing to use whatever the public server is available, which it's kind of a conundrum. But now we have an option. So the first one out of so there's Signal out there, there's Wire, there is Telegram, there's WhatsApp, there's Viber. Out of all of those, apparently Wire's the first one to open source everything.
The whole thing, top to bottom. Now
what'll be interesting is. What will really be interesting is if somebody could dig in and let us know what exactly do they mean when they say we need to remove dependencies on specific services so that you can host it, because apparently the code is available, but you can't actually host it. So that leads me to think that one of two things. So I suppose I could go take the code and I could strip out all of those reliances on services, but. And maybe I'm way oversimplifying it, but you would think that they would just be pointed to some sort of, server, and you could take the code and set up your own server, and then point the client to the different server. I'm not really sure.
A couple things I was wondering about when you were describing it, and this might be the part that they're having trouble with. So long term, I like where they're going.
Yeah,
where they're going long term is even self-hosted with Federation.
Yeah, yes,
that sounds really cool.
Right.
But I would like to know more about how they do push notifications. They're planning to break out everything into separate repositories, and the push notification WebSocket is going to be called Canon. Get it? Because you're shooting out
Yeah.
messages, so it's called Canon.
Yeah.
And that is a tricky beast because that requires talking to Google services and Apple services.
Right.
And in both cases, you're going to have to be a registered developer. And the other thing is, you can have Wire have perfect encryption, and you can have an open source server and an open source client that you're auditing every day, every night. But as long as you're sending that content, and the content being previews of your messages through either one of these push notification services, Apple and Google have a legal record of that communication.
Oh, sure.
So the push notification infrastructure is the weak part in all of these encrypted apps. Self-destructing messages, Telegram, WhatsApp, it doesn't matter because they all have to go through these services where there's metadata about who messaged you and possibly even a little few lines of the content.
Now, I get a question.
So that could be something that they're struggling with.
So here's one thing that I think is kind of interesting is, on my phone, I've noticed that I have the ability to actually shut off my notifications that pop up. So, for example, I can tell. And so if I do that, does that remove it because it's not then accessing that push notification API?
I don't know. I don't know where that settings. If that settings on this phone, then no, because it's still coming through the push service. See, what depends is what's going through that push service, and maybe there's a way for people to roll their own. The fact that they're breaking it off into their own service is interesting, and you could see how that could even be used by other open source projects.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to follow the development, and I think we've all been kind of waiting to see who broke it first. I guess the answer to that is Wire. James from Idaho is calling. Hi, James. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, just wanted to say, hey, thanks Noah for the play button on your webpage, and say hi to Chris from Idaho. I'd like to wait for some more of his shows. I have to get back to him. And how is his laptop running?
Well, very very nice. Thank you. Well, it is. I went through Idaho 7 days ago now, so I was in your neck of woods 7 days ago, and I've made the trip here with two laptops. I've got my editing laptop, and I've got my review laptop that I'm testing right now. It's currently running Ubuntu 17.10. It was running Gentoo before the road trip, and it's on a brand spanking new Librem 15 from Purism. And I've been kind of impressed so far. So I'm liking 1710 a lot, and I'm liking the Librem 15 a lot, which is giving me more confidence about the Librem 5 fundraiser they're doing right now.
Yeah. It's interesting because it started out a little bit different. So I'm glad that things are kind of turning around. I'm glad the Librem folks are starting to get
the
their heads
first one I was not super happy with, and this was their make good, by the way. I didn't buy it.
Oh, really? Oh, they just sent it to you?
Yeah, they wanted to make good on that original purchase, and so this was their replacement for that.
Good on them. Well, who knows? Maybe they'll turn it around. Hey guys, big news for us at the Ask Noah Show. Some of you have noticed that there is only so much that we can do with caller audio. I mean, at the end of the day, we have these people that are calling in from all walks of life and all these various different devices.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and so in the history of the Ask Noah Show, though, we've only ever not put one call on the air. And that wasn't because his call quality was poor, it's because we literally ran out of time.
And I was drunk.
No, and the guy who was calling in has called the show numerous times before. But everyone else that has ever called the show has gotten through. And that means that the average call quality has been dragged down because we're not kicking people off the air. Episode 1, I said, we are here to help people. And if the byproduct of that is a great show, then so be it. Well, turns out one of our listeners and owns a telephone service company, and the team at Vox Telsis said, we at the Ask Noah Show can have our cake and eat it too. And so I just got word today that they are officially donating a brand new top-of-the-line broadcast phone system to us. Now, Altispeed Technologies, that's the company that's my day job. We've worked with Vox Telsis for a while now. I've been to their office. I have seen their dedication to Linux and open source. They are an open source company first and a telecom second. They have done an excellent job of utilizing open source, leveraging open source, and providing solutions to their customers, kind of like Altispeed does. No cutting quality, but all open source. In fact, so much so that they have to. There's one particular thing that they have to use Windows for, and they actually all of their computers, all of the desktops are all running Linux, and so they actually spin up a VM to get into Windows to do this one little thing. So it's absolutely a great company, and they are our go-to recommendation for SIP service. So when we sign up a customer and they are interested in us managing a PBX system for them, a free PBX system, we always recommend Voxtelsis. So a huge thank you to Mike and Brian from Voxtelsis, and we at the Ask Noah Show, we are so grateful for their generosity. You can find more about Voxtelsis at voxtelsis.com. We'll have that link and more information about Voxtelsis in the show notes. And I just got a message from him. He says that it is shipping tomorrow. So we should have it on the air by next week for you guys. So you have to see if you think there's it's super nice of that guy.
Is.
So see if there is a significant quality increase in the phone lines. So Chris, a lot of people know, I think we've said it before, we are here in New York City covering the Ubuntu Rally. And basically, for those of you that don't know, the Ubuntu Rally is essentially, it's kind of like
a hack fest.
Yeah, it's a hack fest. It's like a conference for people that work at Canonical to get work done.
Yeah, and communities that are connected or want to get involved, and also companies.
Yeah.
So I know some folks from Adobe are here, Microsoft, Slack, bunch of companies, Spotify.
And so, as you know, it's interesting because as we have gone through and kind of talked to some of these people, and we've been watching kind of how they're working, we've realized how important it is for Microsoft to send somebody out to take a given product that Microsoft makes and work with the snapping team to make a snap of that particular product so that it's available for us, the end user. And how else do you do that unless you get those two people in the room? And what better company to do that than Canonical?
Well, it's an opportunity, something you'll hear a lot when you talk to developers. Yeah, I tried to get XYZ from Canonical to build on, say, Fedora, but it was dependent on this Canonical Ubuntu patch. And without these particular Ubuntu-specific patches, it won't run. And those are the kind of problems that get fixed here. So if you are on the other end of that, you can come here and say, okay, guys, well, I need to be able to build this on Fedora. And it can't be dependent on these patches. So whatever you're doing, we've got to upstream that.
Right.
And so that all happens here. It gets upstreamed, they get it working. But something else that's even more exciting than all of that? Because, it is really good insight on how they actually work with outside community members and amongst themselves. And the other thing that's really interesting, just a quick aside, some of them have never met each other. Like, most of them don't know the other 90% of the people. Like, there's like small groups that know each other. But this company's worldwide. And so sometimes the first time they've ever met each other, and so they're working together for the first time. So that's got to be huge for them. But even bigger than that, what's really happening today, even though I'm sure you can't officially say this, but what's genuinely happening today, as we sit here, is the very first development is beginning on 1804.
Oh, boy. Especially after 1710, too. Like, if you guys aren't playing with 1710, you have to be playing with 1710. It is, I think I can speak for both Chris and I when I say this, it is the best release Canonical has ever done.
That's why I put it on the Librem before I came out here.
Yeah, it's just, I am so excited to play with 1710. And so now they're hopefully, and you and I were talking about this earlier today, hopefully what the goal is to take all those things that make 1710 great and just really solidify them and just tweak, just minor little massaging until you get it to a perfect product. And then we get that, when it lands in 1804, people can carry that on.
Yeah, it's a get together. There's a community aspect, but there's an overriding it's time to get work done feeling. Of course, this is day one.
Yeah,
and a couple of days down the road that might begin to shift a little bit. But day one felt very much like we got to capitalize on everybody being in this room.
Right,
and it was heads down. And if people weren't working, they were diagramming, and if they weren't diagramming, they were discussing.
Sure,
and it was pretty intense work. So you and I were sort of like quiet mice as we went around to try to capture it all.
Yeah, we were, and as we kind of went through, and it's like Mark is just a very, very, intimidating person to be around.
He's intense.
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
I think he really, really extols a virtue of a good leader.
Yeah.
And you can tell that just by talking to all the people that work for him.
Yeah.
And that's been really interesting. So Chris and I consider ourselves both very, very fortunate, to have the opportunity to come out here and to be a part of this. It's been really cool. And thank you for. I'm sorry it took so long for us to get you on the Ask Noah show.
No, it was good.
Yeah, we tried to do it episode 3 or 4 or whatever, and that didn't work out.
Well, we
So-
had to go to the airport.
Yeah, it turns out we have to fly. Yeah, it turns out we have to fly all the way to New York City and do this inside of our hotel room. Although I have to say, and if I didn't tweet, I will tweet a picture out of this. I think this is a really cool podcasting setup.
Yeah, it's not bad.
We're sitting at this bench, and we both are on our laptops,
Yeah.
and so we can turn and talk to each other,
Yeah.
and then if we can go back and kind of work a little bit. And
I think what really does it though is that app you have.
Yeah, the app that's telling me that in 9
countdown.
seconds that
Yeah. That's
I mean, it's a-
have you put that in the show notes? You should
no,
sometime.
I will.
Sometime.
It'll be my hot tip.
It is. It's an app pick, if you will.
There you go. All right, guys, that brings us to the end of this week's episode. A huge thank you to Sarah, our call screener, Ben, our producer, and Rakai, our video editor. We'll hand you off to Crosspoint coming up next on KEQQ 88.3 LPFM, Grand Forks.